physical activity and exercise, don't forget, just staying active throughout the lifespan is the way to be cognitively specific. Once you have done that, you've got the basics, the common sense is now common practice, then we get specific with simultaneous cognitive physical training. But I just want to emphasize, as long as you stay active, that's a great way to keep your cognition at healthy functioning levels. So if we're looking at specifically cognitive or simultaneous cognitive physical training, what do we need? On the cognitive side, we need a purposeful and specific stimulus and goal-directed attention. We talked about that back here. We have goal-directed attention, that mental control, that unpredictability. And then we have purposeful and specific stimulus. And Cody, this is the point you hit on, which is, can we target things? Can we target subdomains? And the answer is yes. But it's also got to have a purpose. And then not to say if play didn't have a particular purpose, it can still be beneficial. But organically, we want to come with a purpose. And then on the exercise side, we usually want functional movement and novelty and variability. While there are benefits to linear training, we do want a lot of novelty and variability. We're meant to move functionally. We're meant to move in 3 planes of motion. And so that should be considered while we're incorporating these things. So what are the primary cognitive domains that we'll be focusing on for the sake of this lecture? There's so many different ones that we could focus on. There's a lot of different terminologies and subdomains of the subdomains, but we'll focus on the main ones here. One of them is attention, and there's subtypes of attention, but we'll just say attention. There's reaction time, decision-making, memory, and switching, specifically attention switching, switching between 2 stimuli, 2 targets, or 2 points of focus. And instead of blabbering about these, I thought it might be beneficial to show you some videos. But as I get into the videos, I just want to talk about some more acute variables within the cognitive domains. So if I give someone a cognitive technique, I can have visual inputs, and there's different eye behavior. There's scanning, there's switching from one task to another. They're staying on one target and scanning the environment for that target. There's how close or how far is it away from my eyes. So visual is really important. We're not going to get into a complex, comprehensive list of visual skills and how to train those. That's a bit more a different route, although we do consider neurology and neurological eye training and stuff like that. That stuff's of very good value. But we just want to look at a high-level visual input. We know those are acute variables, so what you're doing with your eyes does matter relative to cognition and brain activity. Same thing with audible inputs. I love the field of audible neuroscience coming out, music to get you more in trained focus states, and phase locking and all these exciting topics coming out in audible neuroscience, binaural beats. But for the sake of what we're doing, we're in a gym and we're usually talking to our clients, or we're receiving audible inputs ourselves. And so certain variables on the audible inputs might include the vector, what direction the sound is coming from, whether or not it's integrated with the visual system, the quality or the level of sound of the audible input, and what the vestibular system is doing. What's our position? With all this eye and ear stuff, we might wonder, well, will they get dizzy? Well, we just consider vestibular function and position as an acute variable. And lastly, our proprioceptive inputs. Here are just some of them. Load, do we have any external load, or are we creating internal tension? Direction that we're moving in, any touch or pressure or sensory integration involved in what we're doing. The environment that they're in, being barefoot on grass is much different than being on rubber floor and shoes. Position, and then apparel. If you've worked out in Lululemons versus Nike, you know the difference. If you've worked out in Lululemons versus nude, you definitely know the difference. I hope you haven't done the latter. So for attention, here's a quick drill showing an example of attention. The lighting will get better there, but this was a workshop at Equinox, and they're doing some alternating anterior lunges. Some are more gracious than others, but their eyes are fixed on the tip of their finger. We drew little pen dots on their fingers so they hyper-focus, and then they would just do different visual pursuits or saccades to get them to look in different positions. Now, what they were doing, I wouldn't suggest doing with an aging audience. I'd start with a very slow or a focalized still point, focusing your eyes on the finger or on a pen, getting hyper-focused on it so they're not just kind of blurry, kind of looking at the general direction, but really focusing on it. And you will see that the direction of their eyes changes their head, changes the way they step, it makes it more dynamic. So it's not just a balance drill. I want you to see that because their eyes are focused on one point, it's focalized attention, theoretically, they are working on sustained focalized attention using the eyes as a variable. And so you can integrate a lot of eye tracking, but sustained attention could be not looking at your finger, it could be looking at a specific target or maintaining focus. If you're looking at mindfulness, we maintain focus on maybe a single spot, and that has been shown to improve attention and executive function. And so we're theorizing here that by externalizing your attention, and we know that external focus can improve movement performance, we are also working this subdomain of cognitive function of attention. Okay. And then memory. So here are my friends, Casey and Trevor from the Institute of Motion, doing a visual recognition drill. And so we have 3 tools. We have a kettlebell, a med ball, and a dumbbell. And what Casey's doing is she's pointing to them in a certain order. Trevor has to kind of skedaddle over and do them in that order. You might see that he messed up a couple times where he forgot to do a couple reps here. His memory isn't the best. But this is short-term or immediate recall, but primarily using the visual system. You can also assign numbers to different cones, different objects. You can start to say, do this in this order. If we have different colored tools, we could use different colors. And so it's just using a combination of visual and or audible inputs. Here there's no audible, it's just visual. Before this, Trevor happened to get a quantitative EEG and saw that through his brain scan, it was interpreted by a neuroscientist that he does not intake visual information as well as audible. And so this was my recommendation for him. Decision making and task switching. So this combines a few things. So this is when we start to stack different cognitive functions, different domains together, because we start with one, just like we would a movement. We start basic and linear and we expand out. Same thing with cognitive function. We start with one and then we start to stack others and make it more complex. So you'll see them struggling with this drill here. They have a ball. They're supposed to throw it to the opposite hand as they do a lateral lunge to the opposite side of the partner. They got 1 rep here before she dropped it. And then there we go. So they're attention switching their attention from the lateral lunge to the toss. And some people here are just regressing it, bilateral, tossing it across their body, more of attention switching. Now, if their eyes were focused on the ball the entire time, it'd be more sustained attention. And so you see what the eyes do, what your body does, what the cues are, really determine the cognitive functions that we believe we are addressing. So once again, to review these, attention, reaction time, decision-making, memory, and switching. Hopefully you got some ideas in ways you can start messing with this on your own. Anything on that, Cody?
No, that's just great stuff. I'm just processing it all.
Absolutely, yeah. The speed of processing, man. Now, I want everyone to keep something in mind, the state of flow. We hear about the physiological and psychological benefits of flow states nowadays. It's getting very popular. I just want to let people know that there's this balance between skills and task difficulty. So if it's too much of a challenge, whatever you're giving them, because a lot of these will be challenges, they'll be like games. If it's too much of a challenge, you might have anxiety, frustration, fear of failure. Now that's okay if we want to train our client to be able to manage their frustrations under failure. We can actually have that as a goal, but usually we want to keep them in flow. If their skill level is too high, if I did, maybe the visual thing with an athlete or the tossing the ball back across the body with a baseball player, they might be bored. They might have, just get into a routine where it's a little mindless. They may lose interest. And so we want a balance of challenge and skill. And as their skills develop, the challenge should develop. As the challenge develops, the skill should develop. And this is really the interaction you want to have. And this is definitely seen. You will see these emotions subjectively in person in your observation as a coach and a trainer, but you want to keep this in mind. And there are neurological and neurochemical benefits to the different phases of flow, but we won't go into that right now. For the concepts of cognitive and physical exercise, let's just review these. So we want voluntary, skill-based, mindful, playful, and or complex movements in order to have a better learning effect, a more profound effect on brain structure and function. And if you're checking off one or more of these boxes, then you're a cognitive exercise specialist in my books. And then enriched environments lead to a multiplied neurogenesis effect due to explorative behavior, locomotor activity, and learning. Just watch kids. This is how they develop. In terms of intensity, too low intensity without novelty or challenge, it's not enough stimuli for cognitive benefit, and too much intensity, disruptive stress hormones, too much cortisol. And so we want to find a balance, and that's where that flow state chart really comes in handy. Now, I do want to say on that last point, if you have some high intensity interval training, you still get benefits. If you're walking, you still get cognitive benefits. So I don't want to everyone to think, well, if it's too low or too high, it's not good. It can still be beneficial. Now, combining load with controlled intensity, learning and novelty is theoretically the best combo meal. But there is a lot of evidence pointing to that. Very interesting to note, an environment without exercise, no matter the stimulation, has little to no effect on neurogenesis. And they've done this where they restrain animals from moving, and you can stimulate them cognitively, and there's a little to no effect on neurogenesis. I find this amazing. If this is not convincing enough to say movement and exercise are one of the best ways to train the brain and enhance cognition, I don't know what is. Because I think of that and I think, well, we're sedentary when we're doing a lot of our cognitive stimulation. What happens if we're moving, if we're exercising? I find that fascinating. So how do I start to apply this? How would I do this in my next workout, Ryan? I got someone coming up in the next hour. What do I do? You might start with some mobility, anything that autonomically regulates the nervous system, ANS regulation, whether it's mobility, breathing, and some skill practice. Warm them up with some, sports-like movements, some basic movements that are more complex. And then I would go into more linear loaded training. You want to get that cortical spinal activity, sort of upregulate the nervous system a bit. Start linear, then move three-dimensionally. Then go into some more coordination exercises or variables. And then in the bulk of the workout, start to go into some play, some flows where you're stringing different movements together, cognitive specificity, like the drills we showed earlier. That's where I would do my cognitive specific work. And then end it with some breath work, mindful movement like Tai Chi or mindfulness. If you don't know how to provide these things, go get certified by Open the Door to Tai Chi. Go learn some mindfulness and start to provide this for your clients or refer out. It's an extremely powerful tool. And so if we follow this formula, it's not really a formula, but it's a proposed format. This is a great general cognitive health program using movement as a main medium for delivering that benefit. Programming considerations, what are the actual phases of this? So according to the research, there's anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks of training phase with a specific set of stimuli for a general neuroplastic change. So sometimes people do this like, oh, is your attention better after 1 rep? You gotta let it adapt, just like structural changes. When it comes to there's 6 different factors that may change the effect of this, of improving cognition through exercise: age, gender, genetics, fitness level, nutrition, socioeconomics. Sometimes people with a really high fitness level don't get the benefit. We saw the age chart at the beginning. Genetics play a role. Nutrition, socioeconomics play a role. And then 20 to 40% of your workout should consider having cognitive function, specificity, and cognitive stimulus. I'm not saying all of your workouts should be this, because we want a variety of things, but you should consider at least starting this out, 20 to 40% of your workout, integrate play, integrate flow, integrate mindful movement, integrate cognitive specificity and stimuli. And then 1 to 6 months of training for cognitive performance has varied effects, but the longer the program, the better the effects. I'm working with a company called SMARTFit, and they are a technology company that has taken a lot of these subdomains of cognitive function. Think of lumosity for your body, where you see words, letters, you have to go in the reverse or regular order of the alphabet. You got to track the color, it tracks reaction time, it tracks your accuracy. You can do a lot of movements that are athletic, sports-based, specific to the geriatric population. So I love working with this company because it's like my favorite dumbbell. I'm not saying it's the only dumbbell, but it's one of my favorite tools. And so we saw low-tech ways of doing this, like I showed you through the videos, but I just want to let you know, technology is amazing, and I love working with SmartFit because it's kind of a turnkey solution. It shortcuts the thinking I have to do to design a program, but I still get to use this as an amazing tool because it allows me things I can do that I can't do on my own, and it'll be a little bit more specific. So very excited about this technology. Right now, we are working with USC to do research on Parkinson's, ADHD, sports vision for different sports, and concussion. So very excited to see the effects of that. So research is in the process.